Hello and welcome to another conversation of Parenting the Gods. This time we have a guest who I love. Deborah McNelis is with us today. She has a master in education and is the founder of Brain Insights. She is the author of the Brain Development series of brain development activity packets for parents. She started her career teaching kindergarten. From there, she created a community based organization called Family Network, coordinated a family literacy program for in need families, taught in the Early Childhood Associate Degree program. Then, as a brain development specialist, worked for an advocacy agency for children and families. She recently collaborated with Red Leaf Press to publish an additional series of brain packets for early childhood educators. Her favorite roles in life are being the parent to two terrific daughters and two wonderful grandchildren. Deborah, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you so very much. It's such a pleasure. You're such a wonderful person to know and be connected with, and I'm just thrilled to have you share this information and exchange this with you.
Um, Deborah works in the subject of brain development of humans. And when I physically met her, because I know her online for a while, she presented to us this beautiful piece of paper entitled Loving a Baby. And if you have been seeing the series, we always close with the sentence that the only language that children understand is love. And that's what Deborah's work is all about. So I want you to start to introduce us. How did this work of the brain and how did you get into this and maybe what does love have to do with this equation?
Well, it is all coming from my heart, so it's truly love that is motivating me. It all really started back when I was a freshman in college. And I was attending a school that asked you to declare your major in your freshman year. And at that time, I still didn't know what I wanted to go into, like many freshmen don't. And my advisor said, well, it's the end of the first quarter. You're going to have to decide by Monday what you want to go into and what you want to major in. So I went back home for the weekend and I was sitting with my family watching a children's choir. And as I was watching them, I, it, of course, these thoughts were going through my mind. What do I want to be? What do I want to go into? And I had the thought, this thought came to me as I was watching these children. All of those children, parents, and the adults in their lives don't know all they could know to help those children become all they have the potential to become. And it was that moment, that thought, that just truly inspired me and has driven my career the rest of my life now. I decided that somehow intuitively I realized that I wanted to reach kids as early as possible. So I went into early childhood education. And I started by teaching kindergarten. And as you mentioned, I taught kindergarten, and then I started a community based organization called Family Network. And then I coordinated a family literacy program for several years and taught in the early childhood associate degree program. And all during that time, all of that was based on behavioral studies and theory because technology wasn't advanced enough to know all that we do now know about how the brain develops in the most optimal ways. So, when the brain research started coming out, I got so excited. I thought, okay, here we go. The world is finally going to know and understand how children's brains develop in the best possible ways and how important these early years are in that development. So I started learning everything I could and started talking and sharing it with everyone I could. So from there, as you mentioned, I work for an advocacy agency. It's called, it was an advocacy agency for children and families so that we could promote how and create understanding on how children's brains develop so that we could get support for policies and funding and programs and recognition for this important field. So I did that for about 4 years. I even drove a little bus around. It was called the Better Badger Baby Bus. We had it filled with information, and we went to different locations, and it was great fun and a great project. But the problem was it was a nonprofit organization, and the funding ran out, which does happen with nonprofits.
Of course.
So what I tell everyone now is the funding ran out, but my passion to get the information out, that didn't happen. So,
Great.
I guess I'm just going to do this on my own. And I started Brain Insights to give insights into how children's brains develop.
Oh, great for you, because I'm passionate about the subject. I started with this subject getting pregnant, and the book of Dr. Lipton fell on my hands. I will put the link here for people who would like to read this book. But this man is, for me, as far as I know, the first scientist who got out the idea that we have a lot to do with our health. And he touches slightly on the subject that we parents, especially mothers, especially pregnant mothers, have a lot to do with the development of the brain of our children. And that as a scientist, or not in the medical profession, or not in the educational world, just as a mom, I was hooked.
Wonderful.
I would love that you tell us, because obviously this is your background, and I would like to start from there, from pregnancy. How can we influence is it, I mean, the way the doctor puts it is, oh, no, now my daughter is crying. Oh, yeah. Oh. I'm able to edit it.
Okay.
Oh, poor thing. Okay, so what I would like to ask you is, what's your take on what happens in the womb? What happens in the brain of every single human being? How can we as parents influence that brain development?
Well, prenatally, that's an area that I think has more understanding than than the brain development after birth. So let me talk about it in two stages. Certainly, nutrition is huge, has a huge influence and impact on the way that the brain is going to develop. So prenatally, moms need to pay attention to their nutrition in many ways. Not smoking, not drinking, those are a bit more common, but making sure that they have the healthy nutrition really, really impacts the brain. Also, stress, reducing stress levels for the parent, the mom, is critically important as well. Um, so I know that's not always entirely possible. It's kind of a stressful time. There's lots of changes going on, but as much as a mom can, reducing stress levels does impact the brain. So after birth, the thing is that it's still a minority of people that realize that how much impact we can have after the baby is born. So again, talking about prenatally, we have born with about 100 billion brain cells. And prior to birth, we have more than 100 billion brain cells, more like 200 billion brain cells. And so a pregnant mom has that opportunity, like I was talking about, to make those 200 brain cells be as healthy as possible so that a baby is born with the best 100 billion brain cells, the healthiest brain cells to make connections. And the thing is that it's the experiences that a child has after birth that plays on the genetic makeup to actually physically grow and develop a brain. So it's the experiences a child has that physically create connections between the 100 billion brain cells that a child has. And so the 90% of the brain is going to make these connections and physically grow and develop after birth, at the time the child is 5 years old. So it's kind of like the time from birth to kindergarten is like the fourth trimester.
Yeah.
So it's the time while we're still developing that brain, and we have so much opportunity by realizing that it's the experiences we provide for that child that are going to have the greatest impact. And getting back to love, love is the main thing that the brain needs for making those healthy connections.
I could love that you elaborate on that word experiences, because the first thing that comes to my mind is the idea of giving them many experiences. And then I got into stress, and then I get into confusion. What do you mean really by experiences? What is ideal for the brain, the development of the brain?
Oh, I love that question because, um, yeah, a lot of times what has happened is those that are tuned in to the fact that experiences do influence the way that a brain is wired. A lot of people have taken that information and used it with the thinking that, oh, that must mean we need to push a lot on these young children to learn as much as they can in these early years. So early brain development has become synonymous in many ways with meaning let's push young children to learn more at earlier ages. And so that's why I love your question, because that's not what it means at all. What it means is every experience, everything that happens with a child is an experience. That those first moments, that skin to skin contact, and the gazing of the mom and the baby, that's an experience. That's wiring the brain. So every experience after that, everything that stimulation that is coming to that child is impacting that brain. So we need to be aware of that. So we're providing the most positive experiences, but not with that emphasis of pushing young children, but providing play, lots and lots of play and opportunities for movement. And even roughhousing play is so good for coordinating the higher areas of the brain. Those interactions we have, those relationships, those early relationships are critical to the brain. Nutrition, I talked about it prenatally. It's really, really important for a developing brain as well. We often think about the body related to nutrition, but nutrition critically impacts the brain. And we need the good fats and the omega-3s for creating the coating that makes those connections between the brain cells. And we need sleep, adequate amounts of sleep. We need time in nature. We need all of these things to positively impact the brain. So those are the type of experiences. So
I
thanks
love
for that wonderful question.
I love that you're being very specific, because I believe that this has to be really made clear for, particularly for mothers who are first-time moms, and what does an experience mean? What is an experience for a newborn? And it's so clear to just to look at his eyes. That's wiring the brain. And I love what you say, because I'm an advocate of good eating. Uh, that fat is good kind of fat. Our omega-3 is, and we have to look at into that. Sleep is just so crucial. Um, I, I would like to take it this way now, because it's just so interesting, and that we can go so many directions what you talk about. This woman is amazing, ladies and gentlemen. She has gone to the level of detail in her work to give clear examples to mothers. If you have a child from this age to this age, from this age to this age, these are the kind of experiences that you can give your child. So you are really giving us not just the, it is important to help the children to develop his brain, but you help them exactly with the how. You help us exactly with the how. Give us some examples, particularly for the brand new moms, for the ones who are in the, let's say, first year of life, or first 6 months of life. What kind of experiences do you recommend us?
Well, that actually, so you mentioned that I developed these for different ages. So I have a focus on birth to age all the way up to age 6, but it happens to be that first year that happens to be my particular favorite, and the area that I feel has the most dramatic impact, because um, establishing a secure attachment with a child is such a wide range and long lasting impact on well being and success in life, and relationships later in life. And a lot of times when people hear about discussions about secure attachment, it sounds like, oh, that warm and fuzzy stuff, and that's the social emotional aspect of development, which of course is critically important. But a lot of people place importance on the cognitive development. What often isn't realized is that secure attachment directly impacts cognitive development as well. And it's the beginning stages of developing the highest functioning area of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, that regulates how we operate, how we control ourselves and our emotions, um, uh, and behave. So having those loving, responsive, consistent um, interactions with the baby is what's critical. So when a baby is expressing a need, and that adult in their life, especially a primary caregiver, responds consistently and warmly in a nurturing way, that is critically impacting the brain for all those reasons that I just talked about. And so it's the key is that response that is consistent and predictable for that baby and is repeated. And all that baby is learning and making actual connections in their brain from those repeated experiences are saying, I am worthwhile. I must be someone important. I get my needs met. This world is a safe and comforting place. That's the important information and impressions that that child is getting through those types of interactions. So, um, so as you say, I give those specific ideas and ways that that can happen throughout the information that I share in the brain packets.
I find so important what you say, Uh, I have recently reconnected with people who I haven't seen for the past 30 years. And I learned that 3 women my age passed recently. I am not yet 45 years old. And how is that possible? How is that possible? And how is it possible that we overeat, that we have diabetes so early? How is it possible that you have a heart attack so young? And my conclusion is the early brain development, the early messages that we are giving to our children. So it's not nice to have a fluffy subject that you're talking about. It's really critical, and um, I really want to urge people to realize that by doing this for the child, you are doing it for yourself. When you're doing it consistently, you have to have the mindfulness to be able to do that. Uh,
And it ends up that you're right. Doing it for yourself as well, because a baby that has been had their needs met consistently and predictably in this way ends up being a calmer baby, because that baby is learning, if I express my need is going to be met, and knows what to expect. So that baby isn't going to have to scream and cry and do so much outward behaviors to get those needs met. They learn that those are going to be met, and so it results in a calmer baby and happier parents.
yeah, 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 absolutely. And the better society in the very long run.
Oh, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, bringing that up is the focus of my work is really twofold. One is to create awareness. I always tell everyone that my goal with Brain Insights is only to reach every adult. I want every adult to understand this, because we we not only need parents and professionals that are working directly with children to understand this, but we need everyone, because everyone has an influence in some way over the way that children are going to be provided for, or what they're going to receive. So we need policymakers and business owners and um, judges and medical professionals and the general public and voters and everyone to realize this, so that you're right, it makes a difference in our societies in the long run.
Yeah, yeah. The Deborah, you moved. I don't know how, and
Oh,
my thing is covering your eye.
is this better?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Please repeat that part. I will edit it. When you say, I tell people that my goal with Brain Insights is. Go
But
ahead.
I tell people that my goal with Brain Insights is that I only want to reach every adult. Just that's all. Just every adult. Because every adult on this planet benefits. We all benefit when all children have well developed brains. So we not only need uh, parents and professionals working directly with children to understand early brain development and the impact that it can have, but we need everyone that can have a positive influence on children to understand how their brain develops. So we need business leaders and community leaders and uh, people making up the laws and policies. We need the general public and voters and media and everyone to understand the impact that understanding early brain development can make.
Oh, bless you. I'm so happy that you're in this planet and you got your company.
Oh,
I,
thank you.
I want you people to understand what happens with a human being who is raised in this loving fashion versus the opposite, neglect, violence, aggression. What's the difference? What kind of adults are produced with these two different options?
I talk a lot about this in my presentations and do that comparison. in simulations and demonstrations. But um, the simplest answer is the brain doesn't, when experiencing those types of situations like you just described, what happens is the brain doesn't develop in all of the higher functioning areas as optimally as it should. So when um, in healthy brain development, the prefrontal cortex, the one that I mentioned earlier, that helps us regulate our behaviors and our emotions and our thinking processes, doesn't develop in the same way because um, the lower areas of the brain, the more primitive, reactive stress response system areas of the brain, uh, end up having more experiences. So those are the areas that end up with more brain connections. So I don't know if that's helping make, without the demonstrations, if that's coming across clearly. But if a child is receiving a lot of adverse early childhood experiences, what ends up happening is those repeated experiences are impacting more of that um, fight or flight response, and so that individual ends up operating more from a survival focus and the resulting behaviors rather than a highly emotional thinking through processing type of um, thinking to operate and behave. So it also impacts, like you were talking about earlier. There's a lot of research that's showing how that also then impacts health. And so and it all makes so much sense. So just from behavior and interactions and relationships and success in life, but also economically. There's so many economists now that are demonstrating, using the brain research to demonstrate that it's so cost beneficial also to develop brains as healthy as possible in the first place, rather than dealing with those problems or those health issues later.
Wow. It's like we have love and fear in the opposite directions, and we have peace and war in the opposite directions. Saints and psychopaths. It's yeah. I remember when I was little that to hear the sentence "stop crying" because others are going to think that you are weak. So to teach me to suppress my love, my vulnerability. And I think our society is afraid of the fluffiness of cuddling, and what your work is actually to take off that fear from us.
Yeah, exactly. People thrive through love and through understanding and recognition of who they are. It's just the way human beings are made, and so if we're providing that right from the start, we're going to help young children thrive, and it leads to success. It's just a thing I say frequently is not enough people have have made that realization that early brain development connects to success in life.
Yeah. So give us some more house. Uh, any parent that is listening to us right now, what could you tell to them?
Well, getting back to the nutrition thing, what I find when doing presentations, when I start talking about nutrition and the effects on the brain, and help adults realize how that also affects behavior, that's something that that is quite eye-opening for a lot of people. So I talk about how important breakfast is for the brain. The brain has gone all night long without any nourishment. So we wake up and the brain is providing nourishment so that it can function. So just providing breakfast helps. But what we need to ensure is that the brain is getting enough protein and also those omega-3s that I was talking about for breakfast. If a brain, if an individual is only getting simple carbohydrates for their breakfast, so say an example I often use is a sugar donut.
Yeah.
So say we give a child a sugar donut for their breakfast.
Ay, ay, ay.
What happens is 30 minutes later, the blood sugar levels drop, and the brain goes, I needed nourishment to function, and this is what you gave me? I can't operate on this. So what happens is then stress hormones are released, the cortisol to deal with the stress of the brain not getting what it needs. So now we have the drop in blood sugar, we have the stress hormones activated, and guess what happens? We're agitated and we're antsy and we're hyperactive, and the brain is not being able to control, especially young children are not being able, because their brain is not near full development yet, so they don't know how to control all this that they're feeling. And so we have these antsy, aggravated, hyperactive, crabby children because they're just simply because their brain didn't get what they needed.
Yeah. And they go and have a chocolate.
Right. So then the brain is craving more quick energy, so they're asking for it, so the whole cycle continues. But if we provide the protein that the brain needs right from the start, what happens is the hormone serotonin is released, which is the feel-good chemicals, and the brain goes, I got what I need. I can pay attention, I can focus, I can be even-tempered, and just having this kind of understanding is so helpful and beneficial to parents and educators and anyone working with children.
It is so true. I have a 2 years old, 4 years old. I'd say 90 or 100% of tantrums, whenever they have been, are food or sleep related.
That's right.
Give some good protein, gone. And I found really interesting the subject of breakfast and protein. Do you mean that I can actually give them a steak in the morning, a piece of fish?
Yes. Yeah. What we should probably do is ideally switch the way we typically eat and have that type of a meal for breakfast.
Yeah. At home, we are playing a little bit with paleo diet, including for the children, and we're getting more proteins and just playing. We're not really serious paleo eaters, but the idea of having a hamburger for breakfast makes very happy children the rest of the day.
It does. And research has shown that having adequate amounts of protein and a good breakfast does stabilize moods for the rest of the day, not just for the morning. So it really has an impact.
Great secret. And for the moms, this is the way I lost 30 kilos. Good breakfast, steak in the morning.
Yeah.
So that was number one: food, breakfast, protein. That's great. So give us another one. I'm hungry for your knowledge.
One that I have a whole presentation about the way the brain pays attention. It's called attention. And whatever we're focusing our attention on actually physically makes changes to the brain, even adult brains. Whatever we're placing focused attention on physically is changing the wiring in the brain. So I talk about how we can use that to focus our attention on our children and focus our attention on the positives of our children's behavior and what we see our children doing. So, an example that I use during presentations is a dad that had the belief that his daughter was irresponsible. So he had this belief. So what we do is we focus our attention on whatever is going to support our belief. So what he noticed then was all the things that she did that supported his belief that she was irresponsible. So he noticed all these things throughout the day. But what happened was he didn't notice all the responsible things she did do. So it's important for us to make sure we pay attention to what we are focusing our attention on with our children. So if you want to be changing some behavior or reinforcing the positives in your child, it's important to think about what is it that I'm paying attention to. And then I often share a lot of techniques for how then do we share that information of what we are paying attention to with our child. So we can tell the child, simply tell them, I noticed you did this today. I noticed you did that. Well, just having us make that statement, how reinforcing that is to a child. And oftentimes, because I'm very much a person that promotes the positives, people are often surprised to hear me say that I'm not a supporter of praise, because when we're praising, I mean, it's so natural to praise, and it's not like praise is horrible, but it's so natural. So a child draws a picture and they come up to you and show you their picture. They're all proud of it. And our natural response is,
Praise.
good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, praise, pretty, good. What we're doing is we're making a judgment. We're placing our evaluation on it. So what I advocate for instead is just making a statement. So it looks like you're really proud of your picture. Just making that observation or that statement, we're taking away that judgment piece out of it. Or you can turn it around and ask a question. It looks like you really worked hard on that. Are you proud of what you've done? And when we do that, what we're doing is we're helping children to self-evaluate so that they're not becoming dependent on the opinion and the judgments of other people. So when we say, are you proud of what you've done? That child can go either direction and say, yeah, I didn't know I could draw a tree like that before. Or they could say, well, I really could do better. So they're, like I said, evaluating themselves. And if we say, oh, nice job, well, we're setting the bar right there and saying, okay, that's it. And the child might be thinking, well, I could do better, but okay, she thinks it's nice. Okay. So
I love it. I love it. I love it. This is true of the brain development, because you're opening a question, you're opening a conversation, and you are developing the ability to think in the individual. And what I love what you say is that you are not addressing him or talking to him as I am the superior and I'm judging that this is very good, but you are a human being, I'm a human being, so we can have a conversation. And then you're building a relationship for the rest of the life of both.
exactly.
So inspiring.
One of the big things I talk about is respecting children. We need to respect them for who they are. Not try to help them become something, but just respect and recognize who they already are, and then help in revealing who that child is. So your points are, yeah, I so agree with what you just shared.
And by respecting them, you're teaching them to respect themselves.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. This is huge, this point number 2. I am almost terrified to ask you point number 3. What do you have for us?
Um, let's see, what else do I have? What I didn't talk about is the importance of repetition. The brain makes strong connections through the repetition of experiences. So we talked a lot about experiences. But whatever experiences are repeated frequently are the ones the brain is going to hold on to, because um, the brain adapts to whatever environment it is exposed to. So you talked about earlier the contrast between the positive experiences or the negative situations. Whatever environment that child is being exposed to, the brain is going to adapt to either one of those. So, what it in the way it does adapt is through that repetition. So whatever is repeated frequently is what wires the brain, and then what the brain does. So it's in those first early months and years, it's rapidly making these connections based on the experiences that are happening, and then the brain needs to, after making all these connections, the brain is just getting so full and active with these connections that it gets to a point where it says, wait a minute, there is just too much going on in here, it's too disorganized, I can't operate with all of this going on. So what it ends up doing is it starts eliminating, it's called pruning, eliminating some of those connections that have been made. So the way the brain determines which connections to eliminate is based on what is repeated most frequently. So, of course, what we want repeated most frequently are those most positive experiences.
This is so powerful again. Oh yeah. We go to the initial point you made of mindfulness of through the consistent response that you give to your child. You are building his brain, but you have to be consistent yourself. And to be consistent yourself, you have to mind yourself.
That's right. That's completely to to be providing what children need. We have to take care of ourselves. That whole um, concept of putting the oxygen mask on ourselves on the airplane before the child. That's what we have to do. We need to take care of ourselves so that we have adequate nutrition, adequate amounts of sleep. We're being our best selves so that we can be the best that the children need. It's so critically important. And we're talking about attention. What we do to ourselves is we think about what we didn't do, what we should have done differently, what we could have done better. We do this to ourselves all the time. But we need to do just as like I was explaining that we need to do for children, we need to do it for ourselves and focus on the positives because every adult is doing so many positive things every day. And we need to give ourselves a break and recognize that and look at all those positives that we are doing. And then that reinforces again and makes us at a healthy point for being all that a child needs.
So, wow, I'm so inspired, and I think I have 2,000 more questions to you. Ladies and gentlemen, this woman knows so much. Did you see the 3 tips that she just gave? You are just a chest of treasures, and I'm so grateful to have this time to talk to you. Um, I will be listing there below all her contact details so that you can work with her further. All her books and publications and tips and all whatever is going to come next, that you keep connected with her. And now I want to ask you the most difficult question that I love to ask to all my guests, to connect with your intuition and to close the conversation and say goodbye with the last thing that people really need to hear from you.
Oh, the last thing is just um, Yeah, okay, I'm getting choked up, but it is just that we need to recognize how uniquely special every single child is. I use the analogy that children are like snowflakes. You know what we talk about with snowflakes is that everyone is different, everyone is unique, and everyone is beautiful. And I feel the same way about children. We need to recognize them, respect them, and respond to them as the unique and special individual that they are.
Thank you. I'm delighted. I'm absolutely delighted. Thank you very much for sharing this with us. And I know that even if this interview is a relatively long one, there is so much more you can give us. So, ladies and gentlemen, help me thank Deborah to be here with us, and do like this video, because that way more people will know about it. And if you know of people who need to hear this, please do share it. Use all social media, all Facebook, Twitter. Just send it in an email to your friends, to all those mothers who need to hear it, especially the ones with little babies just in their arms or still in their tummies, so that they start developing these brains right now. And do you have some comments for us? Come to our website, parentingthegods.com, and there share with us how you have been developing the brain of your child. How have you been sharing the love? How are you consistent? How are you doing the nutrition? Do you have a recipe to share with us? How are you developing the brain of your child? Go and comment there for us, for other people, so that they learn more on the subject of brain development. And once you're there, please join our mailing list, because there I can share more information that I just cannot share in video. And I want to thank you again, Deborah, for being here with us again. And thank you to all the listeners and viewers. And of course, I want to remind you that the only language that children understand is love. Speak from love, act from love, be love.